Good morning, everyone. So, today we are going to discuss the theory of moral rights. So, what the theory of moral rights says? Basically, that as it is clear from the as it clear theory of moral rights, right? So, moral rights basically what? Morality, moral rights basically the conception of a thing to be right or wrong. So, it is basically our understanding of the society, which basically determines the concept of moral rights theory. So it is basically our understanding of the society, which determines the whether certain action or act is the morally correct or not. So from there, the theory of moral rights emanates. So you can write that the theory of moral rights emanates from the emanates from where from the dictates of human reason, right? Dictates of human reason. Dictates of human reason, and it relies on what? On human being sense of what? Sense of right, wrong, good or evil, etc. Right? So you can say that morals refer to us refer to the principle and values on what a person or society what it says develop the notion of what? Notion of right or wrong. So basically, the moral concept is basically it it is the principles and values on what a person or society develop the notion of right and wrong. So basically, morality you have that for principle and values that what we values in our life. If I value my honesty, so that becomes a kind of moral factor. Integrity, that can be the like suppose I I firmly believe in the education of the women, so that becomes a kind of moral rights, right? So if you talk about the wrong and acceptable behavior of acceptable ways of behavior. Okay, just wait a minute. Okay, now coming to the that according to this theory. So according to this theory what the moral standards or norms should be recognized as superior customs or laws. Why? Because because law themselves will be judged upon the moral standards. So basically, according to this theory, the moral standards or norms should be recognized as what? As superior to the customs or laws. Why? Because laws themselves will be judged upon the moral standards. So basically, you can see that we say that in the preface also that the constitution का जो preamble है basically, that a kind of if you read that preamble, so that basically shows the values that India carries with it. Okay? So sorry, the moral standards or any laws which are framed in the country is basically the determined through the moral understanding of the society, right? Suppose the present government brings uniform civil code, but are we ready to accept that code? Suppose there is a provision of living relationship. So if that was the practice in the past, so that was not acceptable in the morally correct. But now you can see the as the time and space has changed, as the changes is coming up, and they are living a life of like living relationship has become a kind of norms in these days. So even the judiciary has allowed that. Okay, even the laws which are made by the Assam government or the Uttarakhand government, the Inform Civil Code is allowing the living relationship. So from here we can understand that the conception of whether the law is acceptable or not, its root can be traced to the understanding of the society, the moral standards which are acceptable to the society. Okay. So that is the very idea. So now coming to the proponents of the or proponents. So now coming to the proponents of this theory, the chief proponents are Immanuel Kant. So what he says that reason is the distinctive feature of man. So man should be treated as an end to itself, as in itself, not as means to an end, right? So his idea is that, again another thinker is that T.H. Green. तो T.H. Green का कहना है कि that he basically builds his theory on the builds his theory of moral rights on teleological basis, right? Teleological basis argues that argues that rights of man do not emanate emanates from the nature or transcendental laws as held by Locke. Rather, it comes from the moral character of moral character of man himself, right? So it basically is saying that the concept of morality of rights comes from the man himself, right? However, though, for instance, you can see the so adherents of moral rights believe that the convergence of law and morality. For instance, you can see Ronald Dworkin. Ronald Dworkin, in his book Taking Rights Seriously, held that in the sphere of right, separation of morality and rights is impossible. So he says that there is convergence of morality and the rights. Okay, because morality is the thing which are basically the determine the acceptable behavior of certain man in the society, and that's why the rights of man is basically arises from the morality. Okay, so basically there is a kind of convergence of morality and rights, and they are inseparable. Okay, they are not separable. Now there is certain criticism also. So there is criticism also. Now critics argue that moral rights are what? Hypothetical. Why hypothetical? Because moral understanding is basically coming from where? From the our human mind, human reason. So it is hypothetical. Okay. Another thing that the moral relativist, right? Moral relativist criticize it. Criticize it why? Because they feel that the moral standards are flexible, right? Varies from time and space. Okay, time and space. Time and space, and so moral rights cannot be acceptable as universal right, right? Universal right. Another thinker, another thing you can see that there is one thinker named Joseph Raj. Okay, so Joseph Raj, in his work book is important, The Authority of Law, argues that law is autonomous. जैसे हमने देखा था वहाँ पे law and morality is basically converging, but here the law is autonomous. So autonomous, why? Because we can find its content without recourse to morality, right? So basically there can be certain thing, there, for instance, you can see the killing of, right, that is inhuman act, right? जैसे सती practice था, so that was, you know, that abolition of sati हो गया. So law is autonomous, right? We can find it without recourse to the morality. There may be certain things, right? So this is the all about the theory of moral rights. Thank you. And if you like my videos, you can subscribe my channel. We'll coming up with the theory of legal rights, and then we'll proceed with the contemporary theory of rights. Okay, we also have the social welfare of theory of rights, the Marxist theory of rights. So we'll see all these things gradually. Thank you so much.